I'm buffering too. Okay, there we go. Good evening, and welcome to another conversation on Safe Space. This week, the conversation, actually this month, um, is Social Worker Awareness Month. And this week, we will be talking to social workers in the field. I want you to remember that Safe Space is a conversational panel that is intended to be free of judgment, free of harassment, and free of emotional harm. We ask that you keep an open mind and be receptive to different perspectives. So, today I want to thank Marilyn Barnes for coming on and being a part of our panel. We also have the dialogue. I'm not saying the name correctly. Please
Malalo.
forgive me. Dialogue. He's having technical difficulties, but he will be in once we get that straightened out. But Marilyn is going to share with us her title and her duties, and then we'll get started with the conversation. Hey, Marilyn.
Hi, I'm excited to be here. So my name is Marilyn Barnes. Right now, I have my MSW, and about a year and a half, I'm hoping to obtain my LSW, which is my LCSW, which is my clinical social work license. Yeah, that's my
Oh, okay.
title.
Now,
Oh, sorry. I work right now
go ahead.
as a school-based therapist. I'm working at a school in North Lawndale, closer to further west the borderline of North Lawndale and Garfield Park.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now, you're saying that you have your master's in social work. So, what exactly what is a social worker? Because I think about social worker, school counselor, caseworker, case manager. What exactly, when we say that I'm a social worker, what exactly? What's my everyday routine? What are my
Mhm.
duties?
So there's no easy answer to that.
Hmm.
I went to this school called Erickson Institute. That's where I got my master's degree, and our motto was, "Well, it depends." And that's kind of the answer of what a social worker is. Well, it depends. It depends on who you ask, where you're at. There's social work is a very broad field, so it can go anything between casework. If you ever need to help with services, getting food stamps, a medical card. That's one form of social work, doing casework, but then it can also be like what I do, is a therapist, as well as school social workers. They do very much different work than I do, even though I also work in a school. They do more things along the lines of casework, but specific to the school. So helping get certain plans started, like IEPs, 504 plans. So it's very broad.
Oh wow. Yes, that falls under a huge umbrella. Now, with that being titled as a social worker, is there a certain degree that you have to obtain, or is there certain tests that you would have to take in order to become a social worker?
So recently, things have been changing a lot with our education. So previously, for my degree, for my master's degree, we also had to, once we got our degree, had to still take a test in order to have our social work license. However, they recently changed that, and we no longer have to take a test. However, if you are want to become a licensed social worker with a bachelor's degree, you still have to take a test. And then you could also still become a licensed social worker even with less education. You just need a certain amount of hours in the field, and also to take a test and pay some fees. I don't know if Delaluk, you want to add a little bit more on the education side.
Oh yes, please come in and introduce yourself and tell us your title.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Okay, there was an echo there for a bit. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, my name is Tlaloc Rodriguez. school social worker at CPS, Chicago Public Schools. And I've been doing this since 2000. I mean, if you want to count my internship years, it's 2006. And I got to say, it's the best choice I've done. Actually, it was kind of like it was by luck. So I was right here at Jane Addams College of Social Work at UIC, and I was on my first year and heading on to my second year, and they were doing a lottery for school social workers, and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I usually just throw myself and into the fire and see what happens, you know. And if you look back at my life, basically that's what it's been. I was in the military, and now I'm in school, and now social work, and now here I am. But yeah, they did lottery, and the next day they said I'm in the school social work concentration program. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I'm glad that happened because one, you work with youth, parents, right, and you do it's an awesome position to have. Two, you get your summers off, so you're working in school, so that's really cool, right? That's what I like, working in schools. But yeah, what was the question? There was a question I was supposed to answer, or am I just
the question is, in your field, like, what are your duties? What are your titles? What education? What degree? You have just given us general information and the specifics on like the duties that you, your day-to-day duties.
Cool. Yeah. So to work as a school social worker, you need a what they call professional educator license. They used to call it something else, but it's a Type 73 certificate. Well, back in the day, that's what they call it, but now it's a PLE, professional educator license. And basically, that's the only license you need to work in schools as a school social worker. Outside of it's my understanding, outside of a school, I'm not a social worker. Pretty much, I remember that's what they told me in my Jane Addams College. You know, unless you need an LSW to consider yourself a social worker outside of a school. But inside the school, I'm a school social worker, and it's great. I myself right now have not since 2008 did not pursue a licensure outside of schools, and I'm not interested right now in pursuing that. I'm more interested in doing other professional missions that I'm on, and more of a, I don't want to use the word entrepreneur. It sounds a little too business, but I really want to create a in the works of creating this new way of doing things. So I don't want to get into it because it's really deep, and it's like really it's a lot going on there. But it's just a little piece of me that just needs to feel like my life mission. Yeah. But right now, duties that I do, it's a little bit of everything, honestly. I find myself, the number one priority, of course, is crisis intervention, right? Whenever there's a crisis, boom, I got to go there and try to help de-escalate, or help with de-escalation, which I really love de-escalating. That's my favorite part of the job, when there's something that gets your adrenaline going. It's for me, it's a challenge to challenge myself to keep myself collective, right, in that moment. So it's like a real-time process that's going on when there's a crisis, but also I'm checking myself, right? And I know whatever I do, there's going to be a reaction, so I better check myself first, right? So there's that piece where I really love that learning process for myself. There's also luckily, the position I'm in right now, I don't work with IEPs. Typically, school social workers work with IEPs, 504, special education stuff, right? But the position I have is I don't do that. I do all the other stuff, but I don't do the IEPs and 504s. We have a part-time school social worker from central office who comes and does that part of the job. But I work a lot with parents. I find myself doing a lot more work with parents than I do kids, and I really see the effectiveness of building of helping kids be more successful through the work with parents. I do a lot of consultation with staff. I'm actually the behavioral health team lead in our school. It's a model. I don't want to get into this either, but it's a model that is adopted from Lurie Hospital. So it's a medical model that CPS is adopting to use in schools. So I'll just leave it like that. I also do SEL work, social emotional learning, consultation, um, curriculum planning, or bringing ideas in what's best in schools to help develop the social emotional aspect of the child. Um, let's see. I had a whole list of things. I had like 14 items. I done this like a couple of months ago. Like, this will be good for today's podcast. But yeah, I do. I'm also substituting. I substitute when teachers are absent. I'm actually taking over classrooms. I do help administer tests, these national standardized tests that we have to do, right? Also, so there's a lot of things that I don't want to do, but I do.
Yeah.
And
the IAR is coming up. The IAR test is coming up.
Yes.
So how is the social worker different from the school counselor? Because I'm listening to all of your duties, and that's similar to the duties of our school counselors.
Yeah, that's what resonating with me right now. Sounds like what my school counselor does.
Yeah.
Well,
that's really interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the one thing I think huge difference. I mean, school counselors, I got to say, they're awesome. Awesome professionals. The one that I work with, my colleague, she is outstanding. And I've met quite a few in the past as well. But in terms of the little bit of difference, I think is the school social worker. Well, at least me, I find myself going a little bit outside of the school space. You know what I mean? It's more out there. And the way I see it is more on foot kind of thing, as a school social, which originally that is school social. I mean, social work is where you're out there going about doing things, right? But yeah.
You make home visits?
Yeah. Yes. This year, surprisingly, maybe did one or two, but previous years, there are quite a few home visits. Depending on on the attendance. Oh, that's the other piece too. I'm also part of the attendance committee. So yeah.
Oh wow, that again, it's a huge umbrella of the duties that you have to fulfill as a social worker, and the schools that you're in are very lucky to actually have a social worker in the building, because I know in my building we don't have they're not there on a regular basis, and our counselor takes up the bulk of these duties. Now, Marilyn, you say that you are a school therapist. Now, what duties? Because when I think about a therapist, I'm thinking about someone who's talking to me about my mental health, my awareness, emotional intelligence. How does that fall under social work with your students? How do those two connect?
Yeah, so I work for a nonprofit, and so my organization is a partner with CPS, and so we're at several different schools in North Lawndale. And so, yeah, that is what I do. I do provide more mental health services within the school, but like the Lalok, I do go outside of those boundaries. I do check in with teachers as well and provide them with some type of consultation. We actually do have a a teacher consultant through my organization as well. She works with a few teachers at the school consistently. However, I check in regularly with the teachers that I have students in their classes with, one, to see how they're doing in the classroom, but also to kind of help provide them with understanding of what's going on with my kids without going into detail. Because I'm a therapist, there is a sense of confidentiality, so I do not share with what my students share with me unless they give me the okay to do so. And at times they have, asked if I can sit with them to talk to a teacher to let them know, what's been going on, why they might have a change in their behavior. Sometimes they, in the moment, aren't able to recognize, that, it wasn't about that kid that pushed them, that made them, go off on them, but more so about something else that's going on. That was just
something triggered the behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was just the last push. And it's hard often, I think, in a lot of environments, there's a lot of different things going on. There is adultism, where adults feel like they're always right. And plus teachers just have a lot on their plates already. Like it's really hard. And so sometimes I work more as a mediator within those conversations, or I have those kind of conversations in a way for the students at first until they're ready to kind of engage with them themselves. And I work closely with our school counselor as well as our, we do have a social worker, but she, like the other social worker Tlaloc works with, is only at our school part-time. She comes 2 different days out of the week and also goes to a different school. So I try to work very closely with everybody on our behavioral health team so that we're all on the same page. And there's a lot of different, I'm still very new to the field, and CPS in itself is such a large system, plus working with my nonprofit, whole nother system. And on top of that, my organization is funded by the Staines Foundation. And so they're another system that we also have to kind of work with. And they provide not only my services, but also an attendance service to the school and tutoring services with the YMCA. So there's so many people involved in the work that I do. And with my kids as well, all of my kids are part of all of those programs. So it's a lot of different navigating through different things. But my main job is to provide mental health services to students. And so the way that I do my work is very non-directive. I get referrals from teachers normally, and a lot of the time they're based on behavioral concerns. Mm-hmm. There are sometimes, referrals based on, this student had an abrupt change in their behavior. They were very talkative, and now they seem more closed off, and we're worried about them. But I also get referrals directly from students themselves that say that, they want to talk. We'll try to do that with the counselor at first, because the counselor is allotted a number of sessions where she doesn't have to get consent directly from the parents. However, with me, I do have to have consent right away, unless I'm more of in a public setting. So if we're walking through the hallway and a student stops me, then that's okay. But in order for me to really give services, I have to have written or at least verbal consent to start with. But I have had parents also reach out to teachers, concerns about their students, and the teachers, knowing the services that we offer at my school, will let them know. And I do try to be there during times of report card pickups, so that if that comes up, I'm there right away. And I can, this year was really weird. They were still, some of them were virtual. They did offer for parents to come in. And so I was physically there, but I was also ready with a link. So if they want to send them to me, I can be there to talk with them about that.
Yeah, and that's what's a question that I was wondering, how much parent approval is needed for certain conversations with the students and with the staff of the school. I'm pronouncing the name wrong. Please don't fault me. Tlaloc. Okay. How much? I got Tlaloc.
You pronounce all the consonants. Tlaloc. Yep.
Okay.
Really hard.
Okay.
Even people speaking Spanish have a hard time pronouncing it. It's not Spanish.
Okay.
All right. So,
how much parent approval is necessary for your job? Do you have to, in order to talk to the students, do you have to have approval from the parent, administration? How does that work?
Yeah, definitely. Here at my school, which is great, we have strong parent advocates of their kids, and it's great, right? And that is the reason why I'm pushing for us to have a solid system where there's communication between school and home. And so right, that's something that I've noticed this year, and I'm like, hey, I'm always thinking being proactive, and we need to have a solid process where if there's a concern, the person who's always directly working with students need to reach out to the family, like in this case the teachers, right? You need to let teachers know, I mean the parents know that, hey, you find this behavior issue or whatever, right? Whatever the concern is, reach out to the parents right away. All right, so that's what I'm pushing at our school right now. And also, as a behavioral health team lead, I'm also pushing to have something that is more reader friendly and parent friendly documentation, because there's this document that I'm not really okay with it, and parents react to that. And who wants to get a notice that sounds very legal and punitive? Like, no, man, that's not cool at all. So
Yeah, a
that's
lot of
something
the
that,
documentation seems so permanent
yes,
and punitive. Yes.
yeah, scary stuff. My son, he's in CPS, and me too. We're on it, and so it's important that we are strong advocates, and I really applaud the parents at my school. They are strong advocates, and I'm glad to see that, and that's the reason why many of our students are successful. So usually that varies too. Like, again, it's very confusing because through the years, when I started, it was 10. No, it was 3, and then you have to get consent. And then midway through the years, it's 5 sessions with the child, and then you can get consent. And now I'm hearing 7, 10. And so it is unclear, and that's a good one. I'm actually going to jot this down because I'm going to bring it up in our next meeting. Like, where is the policy on this, right? And so it gets lost in translation, a lot of things, and that's what we need to be very careful. Documenting is key.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm not the greatest at, but I still do it as much as I can, and it's been helping me a lot. There's cases where, like, did you see this student? Like, let me check back, and like, oh yeah, I did see the student, and we did this and we did that. So it's always good to look back and have documentation. It really can save your butt.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend that. I'm not a writer, but I end up doing a lot of writing, and gotten better through the years.
Okay. Now, I have questions. You don't have to get too detailed. It's just general because I want viewers, my audience, to know like some of the things that they can expect in the field of social work. And this is going to be addressed to both of you. What has been one of your most difficult cases and why?
Well, one, I want to say that I think the biggest thing to expect is to be ready for the unexpected, which is hard. But my most difficult case, I think for me, last year during my internship, I interned with the same organization that I'm working with now, which is called JPA. And I had a case that kind of really hit hard to home. I felt like it really, and it wasn't necessarily my client that impacted me, but it kind of brought me back to my own childhood. So last year I was also working with children, and this the kid I'm thinking of was a first grader at the time. Yeah. And I just really connected with him. I'm really connected with his mom as well. I last year during COVID, I was all remote during my internship year, so I was doing non-directive play and talk therapy over the computer, which was really crazy. But we found ways to do it. Like, this kid had a huge imagination. We were fighting zombies and bad guys, and we were behind. Like, they were behind me. I had to like hurry up, turn around, get them. And he I'm trying to think of what he did one time, but it was like he called me out on something, And I really appreciate when kids do that, and I think it's important for us as adults to acknowledge when we get called out because we're not always right. And even though I'm a professional, I don't know everything. I believe that the client always knows what's best for them. I'm here as a tool for them to get through their journey, and even along the way. And so I think I would say it was most difficult because of the emotional impact it had on me. And it was really hard to say goodbye to him. And I think that's what I hate about my field, especially about the career that I chose, being a therapist, is that there's these kind of like rules, that, once you terminate with a client, like that's it. There's no more communication. Of course, if they reach out to me, but I can't reach out to them. And so that's I think was the hardest part, and that's what made the case so hard because I felt very connected to him and his family. When I said goodbye, I wanted to say goodbye to all my kids in person, which I was given permission to by my supervisor, to do so. But it was just really hard. They invited me into their home, and my boss told me it was up to me if I felt comfortable doing that. And I did because of how just safe and comfortable I felt with them. But also I saw a lot of growth in him, but on the other side, I saw a lot of growth in myself, as a therapist, but also in my personal life. Like he really made me go back and think about things that happened to myself during childhood that I felt, I guess, that I had blocked out. And it brought me to this place. Like I felt like I was little Marilyn during that time. Like I felt like I had no control. And it wasn't not with him. It wasn't during sessions at all, but in my personal life, like it was just really weird. And I didn't know what was going on. Until I brought it up with my mom outside, like, I don't know why I'm feeling this way. And then she was able to kind of catch me up. Like I just totally had blocked out this memory I was feeling it though. Like I could feel what that day in my childhood felt like, but I didn't know what it was. And I can give some clarification on what it is. I guess I've held like a lot of anger towards both of my parents for a lot of things, but I could never really grapple with why I held anger towards my mom, because I feel like she was always there. She was the one that was there. She never left, She always did all she could for us. She was the best mom that she could be at the time. But for some reason, I've still held this inside of me. And it kind of all clicked then. Like there was a specific day that my dad kind of rejected me, like when I went to him, And I don't remember that ever happening, I remember later on, but not that was the day. And my mom was the one to then come to me and try to, to bring me into her. And I rejected her. And it was more of a projection of what just happened with my dad, And so from that, I felt like from that day, even though I don't remember it until she told me, was where that anger kind of started. I believe she told me that I said that it was her fault that my dad didn't want me. And so that's where it started. And I didn't recall that at all. But as soon as she said that, I broke into tears, but it was more of like a relief. Like I finally, like it made sense now, and it almost like, I won't say, I think I still grappling a little bit with that anger, but I let a lot of it go that day, and I really feel like if it wasn't for my client that kind of brought me back to little Marilyn, that I would still be holding on to that a lot more. So I say that that's probably my most difficult because of I guess how he challenged me, both in the professional by calling me out on stuff, but also in my personal life, which helped me grow as a whole person.
So it sounds like that experience provided you with a revelation into your own trauma.
Journey.
Yeah. Oh, that's
I've seen a therapist too, and I didn't even, but yeah, it was really mind blowing. Yeah, but I feel good. I have a colleague that was also an intern with me, and she now is working with my organization. I was really mad they didn't place me there because I would have been able to keep working with that kid. But they put me I love my school now. I want to be where I'm at, but she's working with him, and so she's given me a little bit of updates. And so even though I can't really, directly interact with him, I have somebody that consumption. Once in a while, she'll give me an update if he brings me up mostly.
Oh yeah, because
A
I
couple
know as
things,
a
it's good.
teacher, I connected with students, and we're supposed to detach ourselves from the situation, but that can be so difficult. And then when they transfer, and you're like, where did they transfer to? The office has no information, and you're like, oh my gosh, I had a connection with the student. I understood like the history of the family, what was going on, what was some of the trauma that the child and the family was experiencing. And then it's like they've vanished, they're gone. You have no contact. Wow. Thank you for being open and transparent, Marilyn. Thank you for that. Talauk?
Tlaloc. All right, let's see here.
Keep correcting me. Please keep correcting me.
No
Talaluk.
worries. No worries.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's a learning process. I know I messed up people's names too, so no worries. It's Tlaloc. And so check this out. I have three big ones that I remember, but I'll do the one that really was very emotional. So before I'm at CPS, this is my third year in CPS with CPS. Before that, I was working in an alternative high school, and man, I really loved, like Maryland. Students were my teachers. They taught me valuable lessons, and I grew because of me working with them, right? And it was such an amazing growing process for me, um, but the one that was really, 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 really hurtful was the fact that 6 of our students in 1 year, or is it 2 years? In 2 years, we lost 6 of our students, male students, due to gun violence, and it was quite a year. And it was very difficult for many of us, and just the trauma, right? That's the other piece too. I forgot to mention trauma, psychophysiology. I love that. I'm a big fan of neuroscience, so I'm very familiar with trauma. What Marilyn just described is a perfect example, and it requires a lot of courage to be able to be real with yourself, right? Be honest with yourself. It requires courage, and that's the piece where I mentioned earlier that's my life mission, to bring out this knowledge, right? This education about being real with ourselves, how important it is to be real with ourselves in order to be, happier, living a happier, liberating life. But anyway, that's a whole different story. Going back to the kids, six of our young men died due to gun violence, and one of them in particular, he was in one of my classes that I was teaching. I was teaching a leadership course, and man, I love this kid, and it hurts. It really hurts, and the piece where I think I also want to caution to all school social workers in general out there is that we have, because I heard you mention, Charisse, that being able to process this, it's difficult. I think the piece is here that we need to sit with our feelings and be okay with it, right? The reason why I'm not choking up and running away from these meetings, talking about these 6 young men, is because I sat through that pain. I allow myself to feel the pain, right? And went through that process, and so I can bounce back, so I can bounce back and be there for other people that are also in need of guidance, So it's not just for me, but it's also for, it's like you are my other me. What I do impacts others, and what others do impacts me. So it's a process. It's a dance that we have to figure out the rrhythm,
And you have to be very careful of secondary trauma, because it is real.
Exactly, and it adds up. And I've experienced a lot of colleagues who secondary, third, fifth, the 100th trauma. One in particular, and we need to be open and honest with each other in order to heal ourselves from these traumas that we experience. And like these 6 kids, it was quite a journey, and some of us are probably still stuck with it. Some of us moved on, but my thing is that find people you can talk to, professional or no professional. If you're a professional, you're always going to need somebody to talk to help process your pain, right? And it starts with you mustering that courage to speak and say it out loud, what your pain is. So if it's necessary for this kind of work, you need to really do some inner work. All right. So all social workers out there, you need some inner work if you want to continue this profession. So it's something that is critical and something that I preach and I practice. I practice what I preach, I guess. I'm just throwing it out there. But yeah, that was my most painful experience. Just losing all those young men in 1 year. It was in 1 year. I mean, when I look back, it was hard. It was very hard, very hard.
In your field, also, it's a question that I have to grapple with. I teach in Inglewood, and talking to therapists and counselors is something that is taboo and rather difficult in the Brown and Black community. What strategies have you used that has shown you success in opening up those lines of communication to someone outside of their immediate family, discussing basically family business? Because, growing up, it was always whatever happens in the house stays in the house. Don't tell anyone our business. And now we're seeing a lot of trauma where families, they're passing down, basically generational trauma of those behaviors that are being passed down. So what are you doing in your space to, combat that mindset of not being able to share, your trauma with someone who can basically help you acknowledge it and get through it?
Interesting. You want to go first, Marilyn? Or
question?
Yeah. I think it's going to be an ongoing battle. I think I come across that a lot, and even in the way that sometimes my org and even my school wants me to word what I do throws me off, because they want to get, of course, the consent, but that word therapist sometimes, it's like, oh, whoa, my kid doesn't need that, which I can understand. I definitely understand that. But I also don't think, it's not, I'm not, it's, that's something else. But the way that I guess I've been going about it is I am not just in my room, in my therapy room. That's not the only place that I am in the school. I've made myself very known in the entire building, from our janitors, to the principal. And then, of course, unfortunately, with COVID, parents aren't really allowed in the buildings, as at least right now, they're not. They can have meetings. They're only allowed in the vestibule or in one room. And so it makes it kind of hard to create relationships. But that's what needs to be done, is to create relationships, not just with my kids that I'm working with, but with their parents, with their families. And so the way that I've been able to do that so far is that at the beginning of the school year, my school had a back to school bash, where they had all of the community providers come, and we had our tables and we had giveaways. And so I was introducing myself to everybody, even if they didn't want me to or not, they played the cha-cha slide. I just like to dance, period. But I got on the dance floor, I was involved in the community. I'm making myself known. I'm a biker. I bike from where I live to North Londo when it's nice. I'm in the community. I try to be up more than just my job. Right now I live in Little Village, which is just a neighborhood over from North Londo. And so I'm really with the greater Lawndale community and uniting both sides of Lawndale. Little Village is technically South Lawndale. And so I have tried to get involved with that initiative as well. It's been a little hard now that I'm kind of deeper in the school year, but I'm hoping to get more involved in that, because I don't want to just be known through what I do. I think that's sometimes the biggest issue with these outside providers coming into neighborhoods is that they just come in and they leave, you know. We don't
Mhm. Mhm.
we get to leave. Our kids don't get to leave, you know.
Yeah.
That's been
Mhm.
my biggest like struggle with my work, I would say, but not because of what I do, because I would hope everybody did what I did, you know. My
Mhm.
kids don't get to leave. I'm not going to avoid the area because something happened necessarily. Of course, my safety is important, but I think that we need to really understand and feel what's going on in order to really help our kids, you know.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of how I've been able to create relationships, you know. I give some of myself, which is frowned upon in my field sometimes as being a therapist. But if they ask and if I feel comfortable sharing, I share, not only with my kids, but with the parents, you know. And I think that that is kind of how I've gotten a little further. And when I have the capacity, I provide, if the parents talk to me, I'm a listening ear. I don't necessarily give advice, you know, not everybody, that's not what people always need. But it's creating relationships. I think that that's what it is. And maybe this year they're not might be open to it. I've had a couple parents that have asked me if I know about services for themselves, and I've helped, you know, refer them out. Now my organization recently got another grant so that we could work directly with the parents of my students. Somebody else though, but you know, it's going to take some time. They might say they're interested now, and then next week, like, no, I'm not, or just start dodging our calls, you know. But
Mhm. Mhm.
if we really want to help them, you know, we got to be consistent. And that doesn't mean like, oh, when are you going to set an appointment with me? It's like, hey, I'm going to text mom, hey, how are you doing? And have
Mhm.
like a text conversation with her.
It's the
Not
small things that matter
with her.
in
Yeah.
reaching out.
I
Mhm.
mean, even yesterday, one of my kids got a nosebleed, you know, and I text mom and let her know, you know, and I waited until she got to the school until I left home because I just wanted, he was with me when it happened, you know. I didn't want to just leave it alone like that. And, you know, mom was like, you know, I like you go above and beyond. Like, I really appreciate you, you know, and I'm not doing it to get that back, but because I genuinely really care about these kids and their families, you know. And so that, I mean, that's how I do it. You know, I create relationships. I do that everywhere.
Yes. Definitely important on building that connection with the students and their families. That is so definitely important, you know, important for us teachers. And I'm definitely seeing how you are going above and beyond, because when you're asking someone to give of themselves in such a vulnerable manner, that speaks volumes, and families definitely appreciate those types of connections. Now, one last question. Okay.
Yeah.
And you
Um,
know, feel free.
uh-huh. Can you guys
um
hear me?
yeah,
Yeah,
I
you're
can hear
buffering a
you.
little bit, but we can still hear you.
Okay. Okay. um
Stop
what
my
are some
camera.
of the trends?
Hmm.
Oh, it's your, maybe if you you turn your camera off, can you hear better?
I can totally hear. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's some of the issues that I had during remote learning. I would tell my students, turn off your camera, and now the audio will work better.
Yeah.
um, what are some of the trends that you see coming or in your field as of late, or basically like with the pandemic? What have you noticed about the field of social work?
Well, on my end in school social work, there was a higher number of parent involvement, parents getting involved in schools. So that was amazing. Just like uh, they're home and we're able to talk. It really helped a lot. But I don't know. At the same time, it's difficult because the students are not socializing. They're not in school, so I don't. It kind of compensates, but I don't. It's different. But the other piece too, I think that it's very helpful on the positive side is that the pandemic forced everybody to learn how to use technology, right? And so it was, kind of like a survival thing, right? And so that's the piece. Yeah. I'm sorry, Sharice. Are we good with time?
Yes, we
So
are. We're.
I wanted to share something really quick from the previous question
Oh
as
no,
well.
no, go ahead.
The piece that I think is important too, like for all, you know, just a little something for the social workers out there, because we need you guys, and we want to make sure that, you know, we continue growing as a field. Is the piece where I've learned that, kind of like what Marilyn said, and I think Marilyn, you know, touched a bit of it, is being real with the students. You know, if they ask about you, you be you in the presence of the student. And uh, that's something that I've learned, you know, because my approach, and this is a piece that I was talking about earlier, you know, it's indigenous practices that is being supported by neuroscience nowadays. You know, we're looking at, you know, we're so used to hearing evidence-based practice. You know, we're let's flip things around and let's do some practice-based evidence, right? And it's an area where I'm learning that, you know, two words, you know, going back to the taboo of not of feelings is a private shameful matter. That is the biggest no humanity can do to humanity, right? Shutting down, hiding away feelings. And that is, for me personally, I think that's the root cause of all the conflict in the world, right? That we are trained to squash what we feel, right? We're programmed to squash it and don't bring it up, don't talk about it. It's your problem, nobody else's problem, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, yes, our feelings are is our problem, it's our responsibility for sure, right? What I feel is my responsibility. It's not yours, Cherise. It's not Marilyn's. It's my responsibility. But the problem is that we're trained to keep it a secret. And I learned that two words: secrets kills, right? And that's something that I, you know, I encourage professionals out there to rethink the profession, right? And look into other means that our ancestors have practiced before, right? And I'm talking about not just the black and brown; it's all over the world, right? You know, from Scotland to northern Africa. You know, here in North America, we're talking about the Aztecs, the Mayans. You know, I'm talking about every indigenous tribe you can think of in the world. All of us always sat down in circles, right? And that's the modality. That's the piece. That's that I try to somehow convey
Oh, I love
to
that.
people, that how important it is that we have real talk. Because if there's no real talk, there's going to be, you know, there's going to be lots of problems. There's going to be lots of tragedies because we don't have spaces where we can be real with ourselves and we can be real with others. So that's the piece that I wanted to share, um, for all our fellow professionals out there.
And children, students, they definitely they see fake. They
Oh yes, that's what students taught me. They know who's a fake.
hmm
Amen
They
to that. Yep.
definitely do. You come real with the student or don't come at all. Because I know
Yeah.
in Inglewood, my
Yeah.
students are not having
Oh yeah.
it.
Oh yeah.
Well, I want to thank the both of you. This has been an enlightening um, conversation. I have a lot I need to think about going forward with my students and my personal connections with them and their families. Um, and then thinking about the communal circles, the peace circles,
Mhm.
that is definitely much needed in our community, in our schools, and just a way for me to rethink my classroom. Both of you have done. I am so happy you two are in this field. You are doing such a great job with the families in your buildings. You're giving of yourselves, and it shows. You can hear the passion. You can feel the authenticity in your work and how you go about your daily routines. And I appreciate it. And I'm sure the families and the staff in your building appreciate what you are doing. One thing I do want to say to the audience, this is social workers awareness month, but with what you guys are doing, it should not just be a month. This is an ongoing awareness. It's about life and preserving a way of life that's healthy, that's mentally healthy and physically healthy. We all talk about obesity and our health, but we do not talk about our mental health enough. We have to remove the taboo about mental health. And we're passing this on to the next generation, and this is something that I'm very passionate about, and I thank you two for sharing. I'm definitely going to have to bring you guys back because you have so much to share, so much to offer. Other educators, other professionals. Marilyn, you may have just started in your field, but your compassion has made you feel like such a seasoned social worker. Thank you, and talalo.
Close.
It's like easy to, if you pronounce it, in the middle, it's Lalo. So it's the T, Lalo.
Talalo.
There you go.
Talalo.
There
Yeah.
you go. You got it. You got it.
And thank you. And I definitely am excited to hear about, some of the things that you're going to be working, some of your projects that you are going to be working on in the future. Thank you so much. And this wraps up another conversation on Safe Space. Thank you to everyone who logged in to view the stream. And again, I want you all to take a moment and shine your light in the dark. And I will see you next week. Goodbye.
Thanks so much, Charisse.